Well, good day, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Banner Buzz, our weekly podcast. I'm Keith Domke, managing editor of the Brenham Banner Press, and I certainly am thrilled to welcome our guest, Steph Jarvis, who is the director of the Texas Cotton Gin Museum, which is in Burton. Steph,
hello.
Thank you. Been looking forward to talking to you for quite a while. So thanks for taking some time out of your day to join us and kind of enlighten us, give us some background about what you're involved with over there in Burton. So thank you.
Yeah.
But before we get started about talking about the cotton gin and the museum and things in Burton, tell us a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind.
Sure. I don't mind at all. Actually, I'm from Washington County, so I actually grew up in Burton.
Okay.
And went to Blaine College. Of course, after that, took me to Austin, where I started out at UT. I ended up at Southwest. I have a journalism degree and a public history degree from Southwest. And loved museums, but didn't really know that was what I wanted to do. But you know how life just kind of takes you in different directions.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
Started a job for a while, and then someone told me about this master's program in history at Southwest, and I decided to check it out. And it turned out being what I loved. I've always loved history. So this is kind of a combination of, history, but then talking to people and helping people learn about history. And so my first job was in Austin at the French Legation Museum. I was the director, started out as programs coordinator and then director there, and was there for 5-6 years until I had my son. And then about 7 years ago, really kind of begged my husband for us to move back to my home town of Burton. And so 7 years ago, we moved back, and the opening opened up at the museum. Linda Russell was our director for 12 years. I know Linda for a long time, and she'd always kind of joked with me about how eventually, she'd retire and the job would be open. And I thought, what are the chances that's going to happen? Well, it happened. So that's my coming home.
How long have you been director of the museum?
So since January of 2017.
Okay, so you see quite a while then. Yeah,
7 years.
Deal. Well, it's great that we still have people who love history, because I know that's kind of maybe a dying trend or something. I know there's a lot of us older, quote unquote, folks who are concerned about maintaining history throughout. As there just doesn't seem to be quite as much interest in generations that are younger than us.
I'm an optimist, so I like to say no, that's not the case.
Okay, well, good. I hope
we might have to look a little bit harder to find, some of those people, but I think they're still out there. And yes, we've got to cultivate them, and that's part of one of our biggest goals at the museum is really cultivating that.
Well, good. I hope you're right.
No matter where you end up, a value of history is important.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Well, so then tell us a little bit about the cotton gin. I understand it's the oldest operating one in America.
Yes. So the Burton Farmers Gin is the oldest operating cotton gin left in the United States. So as we understand it, you can drive around the country and you can find an older structure, but you won't find the things that the Burton Farmers Gin has. So, for example, the engine that operates it, all of the ginning equipment that is located upstairs that actually processes the cotton and then bales it is all intact and working. And so those kind of magic combinations make it different than anything else that's been found. Although I had a fun question one day from a visitor when we do daily tours when we're open. Mm-hmm. And I had a visitor, when I said that about oldest operating in America, they said, well, what about outside of America? That we don't actually know. The America part we know.
Well, that's just great. So can you give us a little more detail about it? Like some of the main parts, which the engine, the other parts, a little bit of history about that?
So it's kind of funny because the gin itself is referring to basically the engine that is separating the seed from the limb, because that's all a cotton gin does. And that's kind of the first question that a lot of people have. They don't even know what a gin does. And a lot of people associate with the drink gin, which is not the association. So that's one of the fun,
I never even thought of that.
Fun facts. So gin is just a shortened version of engine. So when Eli Whitney patented his engine in 1793, he called it his little cotton engine. And so GIN is literally just the a lazy way of saying engine. So the gin itself can be considered the ginning equipment, which is the saw blades that are separating the seed from the lint. But it can also be considered the engine that powers everything. So in our gin, the Burton Farmers gin, it is a 1925 Type 4 Bessemer engine that is a oil burning engine. It runs on diesel today. It used to run on kerosene, actually. So that powers all of the equipment, which are the saw blades located in the gin stands, which is where the main work happens, which is separating the seed from the lint from all the cotton that comes in. And then it is sent down to a huge bale press, which is operated by a hydraulic, and the hydraulic actually presses the bale up from the bottom. And so ultimately, the bale is going to be pressed up from the bottom after, of course, it's wrapped with burlap and ties. But basically, yeah, that's the job of the gin, is separating out all of the seed, cleaning out some of the dirt, like the trash of the leaf and the stem and things like that, and then packaging it into a 500-pound bale for shipment. And that, this is another thing that people will ask about, kind of connecting to today. People will ask if gin still exists. Absolutely, because there is no other way to separate the seed and the lint from the cotton plant to produce something like the shirt that you're wearing, or, I don't have jeans on today, but like jeans, or, anything that cotton is going to go into, that's cotton is going to be made into. The gin is still imperative for that.
They're just more modernized today.
They're more modernized.
Course,
so, of course, ours is an older version of it. So if you travel around Texas, and there's about anywhere from around 180 to 188 cotton gins still operating in Texas.
Okay.
But yes, they're going to look pretty different than our gin.
I'm sure.
So I could talk about any of those parts. You mentioned the engine, which is a wonderful part of it, and actually really the heartbeat of everything. So you can't do any of the work with the gin stands, because that engine, the Bessemer, powers all of it. She's gotten a nickname over the years. She's the Lady B, and that is something that they came up with in the years that they were restoring it and bringing it back to life after it had been sitting, dormant. But yeah, if she doesn't operate, nothing operates. So the day you came was a wonderful day to be there, because we are in the midst of a big repair project on her.
Yeah, I remember you saying that. Yep.
Yeah,
So how did the gin end up in Burton?
So we were the fourth cotton gin in Burton, actually. So we are the new kid on the block, really. So we know as of the 1880s, there was a cotton gin operating in Burton. Okay. The Knittel, the Bauer families were associated with that one. There were two others that came on the scene. There was one that was known as the Went Saunders, which was just down the hill from where we're located, actually, where our water treatment facility is today, roughly around that area. The Knipstein Gin, which is located, if you know where our one four-way stop is in Burton. Basically, right past that one four-way stop is the old feed mill. That was the Knipstein Gin. Previously, it was remodeled in 1948 by the Burton Farmers Gin, because they actually bought them out. But yeah, so 1914 comes along, and our gin was the new kid on the block. But it just shows you that there was that much cotton being grown in this area that our little town needed that many gins. And so the good thing about our gin and it lasting was the fact that we were located right along the railroad line, because that's where the cotton was going to travel.
Right,
and
of course.
So we've got a map where we're trying to locate all of the gins in Washington County, and you've got them all over the county for many, many years. But the ones that were further away from the rail lines would be the ones most likely to close before the ones that were closer. So that's kind of an interesting thing, I think.
So the gin was brought to Burton new?
So the gin equipment, yes, sorry for bringing me full circle here.
That's
so in 1913, actually, the farmers that got together that became shareholders for the gin decided, hey, we need another one. We've got enough of a demand for us to build one. They each contributed shares. Their money came to about $10,000 to $11,000. That was enough to build the gin.
Okay.
They hired the Weirin brothers of Burton, which were associated with the lumber company there in Burton, to actually construct the building. But the ginning equipment itself was going to come from Lummus, which is a long time cotton gin company that's actually still one of the leading cotton gin producers in the world. And so all of the equipment itself would come from Lummus. A lot of the actual iron work and things in the Burton Farmers Gin was from Beaumere Iron Works here in Brenham. And they actually would do repairs through the years too. So that's kind of another fun connection to our local community, to a business that was, responsible for keeping the gin going. But yeah, so basically all those, the building itself constructed, all of the gin equipment, probably other local carpenters were helping them. We don't know a whole lot about the construction because there's no line drawings, no blueprints that we've ever found. There's mentions of them made in the minutes, but none that anybody's ever found. There's drawings that refer to the Lummus equipment, the ginning equipment, but not to the building itself. And so it's I'm not giving up. Maybe one day we'll find it.
That'd be cool if you did. That would be really neat.
But a lot of the local builders would build things however they could, right? They would do it by trial and error and by what they had done before. And literally the gin building it's a large barn. It is a tin and wood structure, basically. It's not brick, it's not rock, it's
And it's kind of tight in there. I mean,
depending on where you are.
Where the main part of the gin is, where I've been. So
the engine room is a little cozy.
Yeah, it was a tight fit when I was there.
And the engine room is actually new. It's new in regards to the whole building because before the Bessemer engine, it was a steam engine, and so that was what powered it for the first 11 years. And then in 1925, they bought the Bessemer and built that shed to contain the Bessemer and protect that $6,000 to $7,000 investment.
Sure. So when it was fully operating, how much cotton could it produce in a day?
Okay, so some of the good days, what I've been told is that 50 to 60 bales could be ginned in a good day. And each bale is going to roughly, they're shooting for 500 pounds per bale. So, I could have plugged that into the calculator for you, but yes, we basically have to take 50 bales times 500 pounds, and that would roughly be how much cotton would be at least pressed into bales. But you have seed that's coming out of that as well. So you've got a bunch of poundage that's due to the seed. So basically 1,500 pounds of cotton comes in a wagon, 500 pounds is going to be lint, 1,000 pounds is going to be seed. So you've got a lot of things going through.
Right. So
the trash, the seed.
For the day, that was quite a bit.
It was. It was a really good thing. And so basically, what that means, which is I think kind of fun for people to realize, if the engine and everything is running well, it is 12 minutes from when the cotton is going to be sucked up the sucker pipe and go through and actually be made into the bale. So if everything's running perfectly, then that's how you would reach that maximum of 50 to 60.
So Eli Whitney knew what he was doing.
Yeah, Eli Whitney and other inventors.
Of course.
He actually wasn't the only one. So that's another very interesting part of the cotton story.
So today, do you only fire it up and operate it for tours and so forth?
So the engine itself in good months, not like right now where it's sitting in repair mode, basically, they're running the engine once or twice a month. Because the more that runs, the better. And so this last year, they found some issues when we had our work day back in March, and then really at festival time too, that it really wasn't running right. And so they started having a couple of work days kind of back to back to really figure out what was going on. So the end result, run the engine more. We have to run the engine more. But the ginning equipment itself, most often is running twice a year, but last year kind of almost also taught us something else about that, because we need to run the gin equipment more, because that is what pushes the engine to really show that it's working to its capacity. That is something that didn't happen. And so when they got to the point where they were trying to gin a bale, that is when the engine finally said, I'm not doing it this time, for whatever reason, which we can talk about. I think you have some other questions. We'll get into that. But yes, so the goal is also to start running the gin equipment more.
Okay.
Now, maybe not pressing full bales, but at least running the stands and then again, pushing that engine to where it's doing what it's meant to do.
Okay.
Because we definitely don't want to wait until festival day when we've got 3,000 to 4,000 people there just waiting to see it run and have it not be able to do that.
So that day that I was there, a few months ago,
yeah,
you were working on some repairs and so forth. For something that is old, is it tough to get parts?
So what we always tell people when they come through is the beauty of what we have there is it is mechanical. And mechanical things, yes, may require parts to be made or refashioned as opposed to just going down the street to a store and buying it. But as long as you have someone to make, machine, install those parts, you can literally run these things forever. It's not dependent on a part coming from another country. It's not needing a circuit board or any of those things, So it's, I think that's one of the great things about it. But with that, you have to have people to operate it. So right now, what you were mentioning about the part that they're machining has to do with a rod or two rods that are located behind that huge flywheel that you saw them lift up and place down. And that was the wheel was moving in a way that was not keeping it straight and therefore not allowing it to do what it really needs to do with all of the engine and making everything run properly. And so they had to disassemble that just to get to that. And now that is being machined, and that's in Bryan. We've got volunteers all around the state, but some that are fairly local, and one that works at a machine shop in Bryan. And that whole crew there has been doing some awesome work to get that machined and ready to come back.
So it's quite a process, and it involves a lot of people. Process,
and they're all very, very devoted to the engine. Some of them have been part since they revived everything. And so, and I'm not sure if she was there the day you were there, but you'd mentioned in kind of the questions you had sent beforehand about people that were training and people that are learning and everything. We actually have 2 women on the engine crew. It's a mother and a daughter. And I think the daughter may have been there the day that you were there. Her dad is the one who's machining that part of the crew.
Okay.
It's Paul and Francis. And she's been around the engine since, before she could walk. And so now she can run the engine, and she is part of the crew that runs it when people are there for, work days, and then, of course, for the festival and everything.
So on the local end, everybody's a volunteer who works on it.
Everybody,
on the local end, the Burton folks.
Well, everybody, other than myself and our programs coordinator, we are the only 2 staff for the museum. Everybody else is a volunteer. So everybody that helps us with the engine in the museum, office, all of those things, they are all volunteers except for 2 staff. So we are so blessed to have people that love it and value it and want it to keep going.
Are you training more people as you go along?
Always.
To be able to...
Always trying. I mean, we're always, so, we do tours year round. And so whenever we meet anybody who is interested at all or potentially interested in the engine or any of the parts, we will share information with them about, hey, there's some great opportunities for you. We started, my coworker before, my current coworker, Tynan, started some engine classes where we actually offered people a chance to come in, hang out with 2 of the engine crew for a couple of hours and actually learn about the history of all of the power sources, but then learn about the Bessemer particularly and try their hand at starting it. And so those were great. And we did those, I think, a year ago, and I'm ready to get them started again because that is a wonderful way to try to connect people with it and hopefully to the younger generation. But we've got so many ways we could connect, like with our local schools, with our local homeschool children. There's so many options. It's just it's the logistics of figuring out how to connect with them, and then how to figure out a way that it works for everybody to come and learn. And
Yeah, this is really fascinating to me. This is all, and we could talk about the gin itself all day
Yeah,
long, but
we
I want to
could.
get to the museum a little bit
We
and the
could,
museum
sure.
part a little bit too.
Yeah.
So, tell us how the museum came about, in relation
Yes.
to the gin itself.
Great, because the gym would shut down in 1980, or excuse me, 1974. It wouldn't be until 1986 that locals and some non-locals really teamed up to bring it back to life, to save it, because the individual that owned the property was getting bids to have the gym torn down. We
Oh,
had a
didn't
local
know that.
heritage society, and those members were definitely interested in saving it, but they were also working on preserving some of the other history around too. So they were kind of, I guess, stretched kind of thin, if you would,
Mm-hmm.
think about it that way. There were some non-local people. There was a couple from Ohio, the Hutchinsons, who came. They bought the Canoodle House in town. They turned that into a B&B. They got involved with some of the historical projects in town, and also got had an interest in the gin. They wanted to learn about
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Doug Hutchinson actually called the Smithsonian, just called them, didn't know anybody there, called them, and they sent a team of historians out, first of all, to check things out. Those historians then came back and basically just gave a charge to the group. They formed a nonprofit called Operation Restoration Inc. Once they decided, hey, this is worth saving.
Mm-hmm.
They basically came back to them and they said, there's no other gin like this in the US. So you guys get to work. You need to get the equipment going, the engine running, and you're going to have something very special. So that was basically what they did.
Uh-huh.
And from
Uh-huh.
there, it was a 13-year journey to become a museum. They started the Cotton Gin Festival in 1990 as a way to fundraise to begin that process. And we still continue the festival today. And it does the same thing in terms of keeping us going. In 1999, the museum was founded. And so, 25 years we've been a museum, which is awesome because we are still a small independent museum, which you don't see as much of. I mean,
Sure.
we've got them all around, but yet I don't know that we have a whole lot of them in our immediate area, that are not linked with state or county or, some other agency. But yeah, 1999.
So when people come to the museum, I know they can tour the gin and everything, but what else is you got history inside the museum? What else is in there?
Yes. So of course, the gin is the main collection piece, basically, our tool for teaching. But the museum itself, we have a great museum space that talks about cotton ginning through time, just the cotton story, which is a really, really long 6,000 to 7,000 year story, depending on which scientists you're going to go with in terms of that history. The visitors can watch a video, which is about 15 to 18 minutes long, that actually shows the gin run and talks about that history.
Okay.
We really try to start people out with that because it's a great introduction. And then they can watch that. They can look in the museum space. That's always free. We do that during our open hours, Tuesdays through Saturdays, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. The guided tours happen each of those days at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Some days we have large group tours that are scheduled that we'll know about, but for individuals, for less than 10 people, they can just walk in anytime, at those 10 a.m. or 2 p.m. time during our open days.
Okay.
Take a tour.
So So
we've got a lot of information.
Yeah.
A lot of great things.
So
some hands-on things. We try to do a little bit of that if we can, but yeah.
So you've kind of mentioned that the gin and the museum is just a key part of Burton and Burton's history and so forth. But I know, and it's so important to have things in a community like the gin and the museum. And I know you, as well as other people, work hard to make sure people know the gin is part of Burton history.
Right.
And I know you have the festival and other things.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the other ways that you try to inform people about how important the gin is to Burton history and history in general?
Yeah, we, like I said, we're there all the time talking to people about it, but you're right. We try to be as big of a part of our community as possible. And I've thought about this a lot. I grew up here in in Burton. But of course, the gin was no longer operating when I was born in 1974. That was the year the gin closed, right? So I have no memories of that part of it, although a lot of our locals do. But like you mentioned before, a lot of people don't. And we've had a lot of people move in that don't
Right,
as well.
sure.
So, in a lot of ways, Burton might not still be there if the gin had not operated as long as it had. So I like to bring that up at times, and have mentioned that in different settings, different offsite programs that we do, because it really is an important part of the story and continues to be an important part of the story of what we do. The museum brings a lot of people to town to visit us from all over the world, actually.
So can you, I don't mean to interrupt you, but do you know how, I mean, if people, you said around the world.
Around the world. So I looked at our guest book because I saw the question last night when I was looking through. And just since September, we've had, September to now, December, early December, we've had Illinois, Minnesota, South Dakota, actually 2 different groups of visitors from South Dakota, North Carolina, Virginia, and then on the international, England, Germany, India, and Switzerland.
Wow.
And so unless a group coordinates and we know specifically, and which we sometimes do, we had visitors from Canada come some years ago that were farmers, and they planned a group specifically.
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of times it's just individual people coming.
Sure.
Like the couple from Switzerland, they found us online, or they saw our sign on the highway or something like that, and they came. I love it.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
I love tracking, and thankfully Linda did it too, where she would go through and she would track. So you can see some of these patterns sometimes of people coming from different places, like countries. Like one year there was people from Russia, and it was just like this little cycle of people. Now, why? We're not sure, but it's very interesting just to see where they're coming from, and to connect with some of the countries that have cotton stories as well, like India. And I met a gentleman from Israel that works in one of the 2 cotton gins from Israel. So I love it. Very interesting.
Neat. Well, unfortunately, we have to start wrapping up, but I wanted, before we went on the air, you mentioned that Burton is going to be part of the Smithsonian Institute's exhibit that's coming to Washington County, the Crossroads exhibit, and boy, that's going to be here the end of this week. It's been months and months and months of planning by a lot of great people. So tell us a little bit as we wrap up about Burton's connection to that whole exhibit.
So we've been part of the discussions when they were thinking about it, when it came to be with the exhibit. And so each of our areas, little communities in Washington County is going to have some lasting things that stay long after the exhibit. And so the one that I brought today is a historic walking tour that our wonderful friend Melinda Fabian has helped us update as part of this. And we have had a walking tour since probably the 2000s. And so this takes you to some of the great historic structures and sites around Burton, and even has some sound walk portions where you can actually listen to the history, and it brings it to life more for people, which we're really, really excited about. So this is one of them. And then, of course, coming up very quickly on the December 14th is our Christmas market and more. And that is the first way that we're going to be connecting with all of the activities that are going on, because I know there's lots of things going on around Washington County on that day as well. And that is our annual Christmas event. Again, you said, we like to tie into the community because we're part of the community. Farmers markets, the Christmas market. It's Christmas shopping, but it's also Christmas activities, fun for the kids. Santa's going to be there, food. We have a local friend who has buggy rides and takes people on buggy rides around town.
It's always a lot of fun.
So that is our first thing. And then in January, we're going to have another open house at a great historic site that a lot of people don't know about in Burton, which I know you've been to, called Long Life Brotherhood. That's going to be at the sort of the tail end of when everything's wrapping up for the exhibit, where we talk more about the history of Long Life Brotherhood. And it was a fraternal organization located just literally down the road, not even a mile from the cotton gin. So
well, that's great. That's great. And I wish we had more time to talk. Again, we could talk for hours about the gin and the museum in Burton, and that's all wonderful stuff. But I want to thank you. I enjoyed having you here, and I always enjoy talking to you whenever I'm in Burton and see you and everything. So, and folks, you've been watching the Banner Buzz podcast. I'm Keith Domke, managing editor, and again, our guest has been Steph Jarvis from the Texas Cotton Gin Museum. Thank you again.
Thank you.
And folks, to listen to our podcast, you simply go to our webpage at www.burnhambanner.com and click on the Listen Now button on our podcast tile. To view the podcast, you visit Spotify and click on the Banner Press link. So again, I thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week, and I hope your holiday season has gotten off to a good start. Thanks for watching, and if you're not a subscriber, please do so at 979-836-7956. Thank you. Have a great day.